everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome to the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. This is my June movie releases podcast extravaganza, where I look at all of the movies coming to theaters in June and want to just sort of celebrate movies for summer movie season and everything coming to theaters. Wanted to welcome to my podcast a first-time guest to my channel. We met a couple of weeks ago through a common friend, through Derek Santi of ReviewNation.net. I write reviews for ReviewNation.net. My guest is a friend of Derek's, so I invited him on the podcast, and he is the first of the Dragon Movie Guy guests who has his stand-alone website to go along with his podcast. It is the Piecing It Together podcast. Please welcome to Dragon Movie Guy, David Rosen of Piecing It Together podcast. Thank you for coming on, Dragon Movie Guy. I appreciate it, and I hope I didn't butcher the name. It's Piecing It Together podcast. Is that correct?
You got it. You nailed it on the first try there. It's that is the name of the show, and thank you so much for having me here. And it's a stacked month of movies to talk about, that's for sure.
It is, absolutely. And before we get started, I wanted to have you briefly describe Piecing It Together. What is the Piecing It Together podcast, and how can people listen to it?
On Piecing It Together, what I do is every week I have a guest on, and we take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies might have inspired it. And all those other movies that we end up bringing up, we call those puzzle pieces. And so all those movies and their influence make up the overall puzzle, which is the main featured movie we're talking about. So each time we are covering, whatever the major releases that week, whether it be like a big theatrical release or a streaming movie or whatever it may be, you end up with a big list of other movies that explore similar themes or ideas or use similar filmmaking styles. Anything me and my guests can kind of connect the main featured movie to, and ends up with a great list of recommendations or movies that maybe do the thing better. It just depends on the movie in particular. And you can find the show on any of the major podcast apps and on my website, piecingpod.com.
piecingpod.com. And what is the current episode the latest episode that you guys have up?
Yeah, for this week, that would be a pretty big movie called Fast X. And it's not always the easiest thing to cover sequels because, a lot of times it's just kind of doing the same thing again, maybe going bigger, but we definitely found some puzzle pieces to talk about with this one. I mean, with how over the top and ridiculous this series has gotten. We talked about Shoot 'Em Up, the I believe it's 2009 Clive Owen action movie that just totally goes off the rails. We talked about Batman v Superman because in Batman v Superman, if you remember, we find out that Batman was watching all this destruction happen in Man of Steel, and we didn't know he was there until Batman v Superman, and that's kind of sets up his whole motivation. And that's exactly how Jason Momoa is set up here in Fast X. We find out that he was there for all the destruction in Fast 5, and now he wants his vengeance and all that. So, that's the kind of, inspirations that we talk about here. We talk about a bunch of other movies in it as well, get some Marvel movies in there, get all kinds of action movies in there, because obviously it's just, at this point, action movies inspiring action movies again.
Absolutely. And I love the Fast and Furious series. I haven't seen Fast X yet, and I'm all for spoilers and everything. So I love the whole Fast and Furious series. The whole it's about family. I love the found family aspect of it, and Vin Diesel mumbling into the camera. I love all of that. So and even though the last one, Fast 9, was not particularly a good film, it had a Fiero, like a Pontiac Fiero, that was shot into space, into outer space, and it's left the quarter of a mile, like 10 seconds at a time thing, long time ago. We're now at a point where we have Fieros in space. So, at least for Fast 9, haven't seen Fast 10 yet, but the trailers look great, and I plan to watch it, if not tonight, in a couple days. So, awesome. That episode of the Piecing It Together podcast is available on
all the major podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, wherever you get your podcasts, it's there. And of course on my website, peaceandpod.com.
And all of the links are in the video description below this video. A little bit of a different format this month. In this June list, we have 9 of our 11 movies are the same, so I thought instead of introducing and reintroducing each film, we're going to go off of your list. You go first as the guest, and I will jump in afterwards and talk about where it is on my list. Let's start with your number 11 movie. And I'm glad you chose this one because this really excited me. And I'm glad we finally got a trailer a couple weeks ago. This is a movie that is based off of a YouTube short from a couple years ago called The Blackening. This is directed by Tim Story, who did the first 2 Fantastic Four films. And I'm going to let you take it away because I just love the humor in the trailer. And I don't really know much about the cast. There are a few people that were in the short that are also in the feature film. But tell me about The Blackening.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that trailer, and one of the things that has me excited about The Blackening is that trailer, because every time I see this trailer before a movie in the theater, it just kills. Every time the theater is cracking up, and I'm like, Tim Story, very hit or miss. Some of his stuff is great, and some of it is pretty bad. But like when I saw this trailer, I was like, I think this one might really knock it out of the park. And it feels like just a total old school throwback horror comedy, like kind of harkening back to the Scary Movie days. And I don't know if it's going to go full on spoof or if it's just going to be just straight up horror with funny. I'm not sure, but I have a good feeling about this one. And part of the reason I wanted to definitely include it on my list is because on June 15th, I'm actually doing a live episode of Piecing It Together on this at Maya Cinemas here in Las Vegas. And we're going to be right after the 7 p.m. showing of the film. We're going to be set up right there in the theater talking about the movie. I've got Miss Michelle from the Las Vegas Black Film Festival. I've got a filmmaker named Marlon Money Stevens and a DJ named Mikey VIP. And we're going to piece together The Blackening. And it's going to be a really fun time.
I love it. And Maya Cinemas is in North Las Vegas along Las Vegas Boulevard. That should be a great location for the podcast. And who are your guests again?
Miss Michelle from the Las Vegas Black Film Festival, a filmmaker named Marlon Money Stevens, and a DJ named Mikey VIP. And it's going to be a great time. This is actually one of 3 live podcasts I have scheduled at Maya over the summer. Sweet.
That sounds great. And you can look forward to it on all of the live stream platforms. This is also on my list. The Blackening is number 3. This is a film that comes out June 16th, just in time for Juneteenth. I didn't know what to think when it popped up in my YouTube suggested. In terms of the sketch, I'm like, hey, what is this? Is this a Key and Peele sketch? Is this an SNL sketch? Like, what? And then I just like after watching and rewatching it like 3 or 4 times, I was like, what is this? Like, and it sort of at the same time, I noticed that it was on the Wikipedia page for movies that were coming out this year. And at the time, there wasn't. This is going back to December, January when I was putting together my movies that I was looking forward to for 2023, and there wasn't a trailer out yet. So I was like, oh my gosh, if the trailer looks anywhere as good as the sketch, and oftentimes they don't translate well to a full film, like a 5 or 10 minute short translating to a hour and a half movie. Sometimes, you lose something in translation, but the trailers for the film look just as funny as the sketch, and the conversations being had between characters, the horror comedy aspect of it, it looks absolutely hilarious. And we tend not to get as many big budget studio level comedies anymore, which is sort of a weird thing, because in a great era of streaming where we have so many prestige shows and so much quality programming on streaming, the one thing that seems to be falling off to the side of the content production is the mid-level studio comedy. Yeah. So the fact that we're getting a couple of studio comedies for this summer, and this one in particular, Blackening, which, other than Tim Story, I didn't recognize a single name on the credits list. So the fact that we're getting new talent in a very unique voice
Yeah.
This is not the typical horror comedy. I love the voice being expressed in the Blackening, so I'm glad it's on your list as well. It's my number 3 for June 2023.
I think it's going to be a fun time. And like you said, we are getting to a period of more comedies after it's been a pretty big dry spell for a while.
Your number 10 is Past Lives. Tell me about Past Lives.
So Past Lives is a movie that's coming out distributed by A24. It's Celine Song's directorial debut and seems to be just like an epic decades-long love story that also kind of looks at the different directions that somebody's life could take if they were to take different paths and whatnot. And I know that this is one that has just had incredible hype out of the festivals. It feels like the kind of movie that we're going to see turn up on a lot of like end of year lists, you know, once we start getting later into the year. I think this is one that's going to kind of stick out and continue to thrive throughout the year. And yeah, I mean, I don't know much. I know it's her directorial debut. I think she worked on a series before this at one point, but I don't know that much about her, but I know it looks great. And yeah, that initial buzz that I've been, you know, hearing about just sounds like it's going to be something really special and kind of evokes the Before trilogy, I feel like, in the trailer.
That's a great reference, too. Written and directed by Celine Song, it stars Greta Lee, Teo Yoo, and John Magaro. Originating out of Korea, we've been getting a lot of great Korean cinema over the last couple of years. Parasite, we've got winning Best Picture. So many different great streaming shows coming out of Korea, and this one looks like it's largely set in America for the current portion of it. And it's sort of an interesting look at a love affair. One of the two marries an American and moves to New York. What else about this film stands out to you?
This looks like a real film nerd, film lover, you know, kind of a movie. Like cinematography looks like beautiful. The score, if the music in the trailer is indicative of the music in the final film, like sounds, you know, wonderful, great performances. It feels very naturalistic and definitely feels like, you know, that kind of movie that I think those of us that are so into film that we make podcasts about them are probably going to be really into.
I agree, and this one comes in at number 5 on my list. There's just something about the sweetness of this movie that it just looks like a very honest exploration of where our loyalties are growing up and how they change. And in the same way that Parasite was literally a film about a family at the top of the hill, at the top of the heap, and a family that was literally at the bottom, in this one, we actually kind of see our lead female character with her friend taking the higher road in the trailer. And I love that symbolism. And like you were saying, I love films that are good enough to come through the film festival circuit, because generally speaking, they have to go through some sort of vetting before they go to a film festival, because no film festival wants to have an absolutely horrendously produced film on their presenting list. So I do love the idea of this film, and you're right, the cinematography looks great, the relationships look like they're fully developed, and I'm excited for this film that comes out June 2nd. Your number 9 movie is Transformers 7, a completely 180 opposite of the last one, Past Lives. Tell me about Transformers Rise of Beasts.
So if I'm being completely honest, I don't know that I'm really excited about this one, but I mean, it had to go on my list anyway because it's Transformers, and like I am a big fan of like giant creature movies, and in this one they are Transformer robot creatures because it's the beasts that are coming into this. I forget what they call them, animal something or other, Transformers, whatever, but you know, it's like a giant gorilla transformer and like giant monster transformers. So like, I don't know, there should be some really insane over the top action in this, and I like both sides of the spectrum when it comes to movies. I like my my Past Lives, and I like my Transformers.
And I believe these are based off of the Beast Wars cartoons from the
Beast
90s.
Wars.
Yeah, I grew up with the OG original Transformers, like the 1984, 85, 86 era.
Yeah.
And that was very, like, I was like the target demographic because I was 9 years old in 1984. So 9, 10, 11 was when Transformers, the original cartoon, was out. So That was sort of my childhood. By the time Beast Wars comes along in the 90s, I wasn't watching Transformers as much anymore. But when this trailer came out, I have to admit that I was a little like, I didn't quite know what to expect. But they got Peter Cullen back. Peter Cullen doing the voice of Optimus Prime. And when they said that the big gorilla Transformer is named Optimus Primal, I just about died laughing at that name, because it's both clever and yet like eye-rolly at the same time, which is perfect for a Michael Bay produced type film. And let's admit it, this is Transformers 7. It is the sequel to Bumblebee, which is weird that it's going back to the Transformers name when it's a Bumblebee sequel-ish. It's set in the 90s, but there's something about it. It looks like a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is very confusing where this fits in any kind of timeline. Not that I remember every, beat of the past 6 Transformers movies, but like, it's hard to tell. Is this a sequel? Is it a reboot? Is it like combining elements? Because in a way, Bumblebee was like its own spin-off that didn't really continue the other Transformers movies. So it's like, are we combining both storylines and moving forward? Like, how involved is Michael Bay at this point? Like, there's a lot of questions here, but yeah, I don't know. Also, apparently Pete Davidson and Michelle Yeoh voice 2 of the Transformers. So I mean, geez, what's going on there? Like, that it's just a lot of random stuff being thrown together here.
Yeah, I mean, like I actually surprisingly liked, and Transformers comes in at number 10 on my list. So also kind of near the bottom, but anytime you can get a big summer blockbuster action movie going, and I'm a huge fan of Michelle Yeoh. Pete Davidson, it's hit or miss, but he is so funny naturally. So I don't know that I've seen him do any voiceover work like this on this kind of a scale before, but I loved him on SNL. So that'll be interesting to see. And yeah, this is happening back in time. So you're right. I at this point, the timeline for the Transformers movies, and considering the first one was set current day in 2006 when it came out, or 2006 or 7. And the whole Allspark thing, and like that whole whatever that origin story was, clearly they threw that out the window with the one with Bumblebee, which was really well done, and I had a blast watching that. Especially with they kind of went away from the Iron Man style Endgame animation, where it was just sort of loops from one thing to another. I love the Transformers animation thing, where you actually see the parts of the robots transforming. It's in the name of the cartoon, for gosh sakes. Yeah. You get to see the actual transformation. So by the time we get to whatever Transformers 5, and they were just sort of like morphing from one thing. Like, it's not Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's not the Mighty Morphin Transformers. It's that whole thing. We want to see Optimus Prime's arms pop out, and the things. I love the transforming and the sound effects, and anytime you can get Peter Cullen's voice saying "roll out," it's sort of like Vin Diesel mumbling "Damn."
Yep, absolutely.
It's that same thing. Yes, it's playing shtick to the. It's playing to the audience, but that's kind of what we go to a Transformers movie for. It's
exactly.
It's a modified creature feature with robots instead of Godzilla, but it should be fun. So I'm also looking forward to Transformers Rise of the Beasts, the 7th Transformers movie. No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence. This is the first movie that's coming out after she had a kid, and this is her return to comedy. And it's a pretty common premise for comedy films, but it's kind of the reverse point of view. In a lot of ways, and it's Jennifer Lawrence returning to comedy. Tell me about No Hard Feelings.
Well, we were just talking about with the Blackening how like we seem to be, getting a return to comedy, to studio comedy, something that's been missing for a while, and this is definitely part of that. And this being specifically a return to like that mid-2000s R-rated raunchy comedy, just like a total, dirty sex comedy. And Jennifer Lawrence is great. I mean, she's great in anything she does, and there's no reason to think that she won't be great in this. And I think this trailer is very funny. And while you were just saying, like, it is kind of well-worn territory for a comedy like this, like, we haven't gotten much like this in a while. Like, I would say maybe at like a much lower budget streaming level, but not at like a mid-budget studio comedy kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays in theaters and if audiences still want movies like this.
It is sort of a throwback to the American Pie generation of films, or Sex Drive is another one it kind of reminds me of. It is the male going off to college, still a virgin, and wanting to lose his virginity. Yes, very well-worn territory. And in this case, it is Matthew Broderick as his dad, hiring Jennifer Lawrence to sort of deflower their baby boy, as the case may be. It's sort of interesting, too. Jennifer Lawrence, one of her first major jobs in Hollywood was on a sitcom. She was on the Bill Engvall show. She was Bill Engvall's daughter on the show. So I think, we get so used to Jennifer Lawrence, movie star, and Jennifer Lawrence, Oscar winner, Oscar nominee, working with Darren Aronofsky and all these big highfalutin directors and tentpole franchise movies, The Hunger Games, that we forget that she's actually really funny too, and she doesn't really get to exercise those comedy muscles as much anymore. This is also on my list for June. I had it a little bit higher. I had it at number 4. I love studio level comedies, and when I saw the trailer for No Hard Feelings, it just it was one of those where I didn't even see it before a movie. I saw it on YouTube, or I saw it on IMDb, and I was like, what is this? Jennifer Lawrence returning to comedy, and I think it's fun too because there was so much that's been gone on in Jennifer Lawrence's life that could have taken her sense of humor about things away. So the fact that this is her first movie after having a kid, it's a return to comedy, so it's a return to her entertainment roots, if you will, with this well-worn trope of the boy becoming a man and losing his virginity as he goes off to college. I love the premise of this. I love that we're getting Matthew Broderick as a dad now, which is it's kind of a head scratcher, but I get it. Time passes. I get it. He's not Ferris Bueller. He is of the age where he could be a father. I get it. But sort of the irony of Ferris Bueller, the ultimate 80s high school party guy, having a son going off to college still a virgin. There's something about that just sort of works. Almost in the same way that you could picture Bert Fleischer as Luke Skywalker's son. They don't look anything alike, but there's something cool about seeing Luke Skywalker as a dad, seeing Mark Hamill as a dad in a biopic comedy. So sort of in a same way, passing of the torch from one generation to another. Also really looking forward to that one. But No Hard Feelings, even the posters for No Hard Feelings, they look like they nail it, and I am really excited for this one. No Hard Feelings hits theaters June 23. A Disney animated film, which is also on my list, and it almost looks more like a Pixar film, but this is Disney animation. All-star voice cast. It reminds me of In-N-Out, is what it reminds me of. Tell me about Elemental.
Yeah, it reminds me so much of Inside Out that I thought it was a Pixar movie when I first saw the trailer for this. Like, it's weird that the line has blurred so much here. If nothing else, they're learning from the best, because I feel like Pixar's been on a roll lately, and I've really liked everything they've made in the last few years. And it's hard to talk about this one without talking about Inside Out. It's almost like the same thing, just from a different studio. But in this case, instead of it being different emotions, it's fire, water, land, and air, I guess. Would that be the 4 of them? But
I believe so. Yeah,
it's the different elements. Yeah,
fire, water, land, and air, directed by Peter Sohn.
There we go. And and they all have to work together to do whatever they have to do in this. But I don't know. I think it looks like it'll be fun.
The whole thing of fire and water, do fire and water mix. I am also very excited for this film. I have it as number 9 on my list. The animation quality. I thought it was Pixar, and granted, Disney owns Pixar, but Pixar really is sort of its own studio, its own thing, and Disney animation has really kind of retained an independent look to itself. So I was the same as you. When I saw the trailers, I thought, oh, this is another Pixar movie, but it's Disney animation, and this one looks like a sort of a return to basics sort of thing. Fire and water and just the elements. There's something basic about it, but also it looks like a return to basics, a return to just a simple concept. It just looks like a lot of fun, a good family film to take to theaters. Even in this era of streaming, we sometimes get a lack of good, diverse family films to go watch in theaters. So this looks like it could be a film that parents can take their kids to. It's got the Disney branding. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. They produced 2 of these sequels at the same time. This is Miles Morales. This is the same team putting together Sony Spider-Verse. Tell me about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I think in a weird way, this one I'm almost more excited about for other people than I am for me, because I feel like people loved the first one so much, and I feel like it's one of the most influential movies of the last 5 years or so. And for that reason, I'm excited about it. I'm excited for it to come out, and I'm excited for people to get excited about movies, And so, me personally, I'm not the biggest superhero movie guy, and so like I go see them all and I enjoy them plenty, but like I don't get super excited about superhero movies. But I will definitely be there, and the visuals in the first one were so good, and I'm sure this will continue to push the envelope and continue to be more and more influential, just like the first one was. I hope this one will be just as funny. Nick Cage in the first one was so great. I don't know who all is along for the ride this time around. There'll be lots of cameos, I'm sure, different voices. I'm excited for it, though. I don't know story-wise what exactly is going on with this one, but visually and just like that level of excitement that goes into these Spider-Verse movies, I think it's going to be really special.
And Shamik Moore returns as the voice of Miles Morales. Haley Steinfeld returns. Oscar Isaac is in this cast. Jake Johnson returns as Peter Reed Parker. Brian Tyree Henry comes back as Jefferson Davis. And Issa Rae joins as Jessica Drew. I'm not as familiar with Jessica Drew as a character, but I know the name. Where does Spider-Man rank in your list of superheroes? I know you said that you're not a huge superhero fan per se, but where do the Spider-Man films come in on your film fandom?
Yeah, I mean, as far as superhero movies go, I mean, that has to be towards the top. Guardians of the Galaxy maybe would go a little bit above that, but especially when we're factoring in the Raimi ones.
For everyone who was fortunate enough to go to CinemaCon this year, they showed a 13-14 minute segment from one of the scenes in the film, and I could vouch for the fact that the animation style is the same as the first film. It looks really heartfelt. My number 11 film is a little bit different. This is Daliland. This is a film that is, it's sort of a film festival darling. It covers Salvador Dali and his life and times in a drama comedy. And while I'm not a huge traditional art critic, I do love art in general. And Salvador Dali's paintings, that very iconic mustache that he has. He is such a weird character that comes a little bit before my time. I don't know a ton about the art community from that generation, but everyone knows the Frida Kahlo monobrow, and everyone knows the Salvador Dali mustache. So to see a film come along that covers Salvador Dali and his life and times in a fun way, in a not too serious. I don't believe this is going to be a film that will be an Oscar contender anytime soon, but to see a take on Salvador Dali, and the fact that the name is Daliland, almost like Dollywood after Dolly Parton, but Daliland. It's a great tongue-in-cheek title for a film about Salvador Dali, which is a little bizarre in and of itself. I love biopics. Daliland comes in at number 11 on my list. Have you heard of Daliland?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen the trailer yet. I'm gonna have to go check it out after we finish this conversation. Obviously Ben Kingsley is great, and Dali is such an interesting character. I mean, I remember when Adrian Brody played him in Midnight in Paris, and he he's just an interesting character for someone to like kind of sink their teeth into, and this kind of having a lighter vibe to it, I think should make for a fun film.
Yeah, and you're right. Ben Kingsley, he was Gandhi, right? Like he won the Oscar for playing Gandhi, including in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He got to return in Shang-Chi. Fascinating idea of having Ben Kingsley taking on the role of Salvador Dali, and that alone sort of is why it comes out of my list. It's number 11 on my list. It is an indie movie. I love indie movies, and I love going to see indie films in theaters as much as possible. So Ben Kingsley as Salvador Dali, that kind of sells itself to a certain extent. Your number 5. This is one that the trailer only dropped like a week or so ago. And so I didn't even know this movie was coming out. Like I've tried to stay on top of these things in terms of looking at them ahead of time. But we've been getting a lot of biopics, and not just biopics, but biopics about products. We just got Air. Yes. We're out in theaters now is the Blackberry movie, and food products. I heard that we're getting a couple of different food product movies, and this one is right along there. This is Flamin Hot, as in Flamin Hot Cheetos. Tell me about Flamin Hot.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Air, Blackberry, also Tetris was another one of these like brand true stories. Some of my favorite movies of 2023 so far. I mean, these movies have just, I don't know what it is, but they all keep coming out amazing. And so I'm very excited to see if this, continues that trend. This is the directorial debut, I believe, of Eva Longoria, which is interesting. And it looks very silly from everything I've heard. This true story is something that people have been wanting to make a movie of for years and years now. And it's just like a really interesting cast of characters. This guy who went from, I believe, being a janitor to coming up with the recipe for Flamin' Hot Cheetos, and then, being ignored at first. But then, of course, history happens. But it's supposed to just be crazy and fun and just a little bit ridiculous, and just like it sounds. And yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see this one.
This is Jesse Garcia as Richard Montañez, our lead character. Sort of interesting, too. Dennis Haysbert, the president from 24, is in it. They haven't said what his character name is yet. But Tony Shalhoub as Roger Enrico. And, of course, Matt Walsh comes in, trusty comedy veteran actor, filling out the cast. I love the idea of this, of the guy who comes out of nowhere to create or influence a product. The Flamin' Hot phenomenon for fast food, for snack foods that was really hit big 10, 15 years ago. Who really knows where these things come from? Like, I remember back in high school, it was extreme. Like, everything, like, Mountain Dew, MTV, everything was extreme. And where does that come from? And 10 years, 15 years after that, 10, 15 years ago now, everything was flaming hot. For a while it was Cool Ranch Doritos and everything else. And then all of a sudden we got a flaming hot. And the poster for this, too, I love the picture of Richard Montañez handing the Flamin' Hot, a hand of God sort of thing coming down.
Sure.
It's cropped out of the picture that I have for the podcast, but it is also on my list. I have Flamin' Hot at number 8 on my list. And yes, you're right. Eva Longoria. Desperate Housewives was in large part a comedy, but for some reason, I don't really associate Eva Longoria and comedy directing. And yet, clearly that's what this film is. And this is interesting, too, because this is straight to streaming.
Yeah.
So it's not getting a theatrical release that I'm aware of. But it's going through what used to be Fox Searchlight, straight to Hulu and Disney+. And obviously, Disney now owns Fox, and therefore has a controlling interest in Hulu. So somehow a Fox Searchlight product is ending up on Hulu as a comedy, which is a little bizarre.
Yeah.
But
I thought we were done with messy releases,
yeah.
Since the pandemic.
But then again, any sort of a biopic about snack products it's probably going to be a little bit bizarre. But when you have that branding of coming through the Searchlight studio, what used to be Fox Searchlight, which is definitely one of the gold standard studios for indie films over the last 25, 30 years. I don't know what the future holds for Searchlight. As a comedy about snack foods, it looks like a lot of fun, streaming on Hulu June 9th. This is The Flash. This is coming out a month after the Flash TV show ends. This is the end of the Snyderverse. This is Barry Allen. This is The Flash. This is Ezra Miller as The Flash. Tell me about The Flash.
I mean, at this point, this is basically morbid curiosity, right? Like, just to figure out what is going on here with this movie after the delays and the controversies and everything going on with Ezra Miller and just like everything going on with this entire series, really. And of course, we still have Aquaman to look forward to. So it's, even though the Snyderverse is over, you know, like it's not over, like it's still just, it's all such a mess. But I don't know. The Flash character was definitely one of the best parts of the Snyderverse. And by all accounts, like all of the industry rumblings is that this movie was worth it to hold on to, you know, after all the delays and all the controversies. Like, it had to come out to theaters. It's that good. It's going to make so much money and it's going to be worth the wait. And so if nothing else, it's going to be interesting to see how it all comes together. And of course, we get Michael Keaton Batman back, which, I mean, who doesn't love that?
Yeah, Ben Affleck back, Michael Keaton back, so we're getting multiple Batmen back. And you're right, Michael Keaton returning to the role that started the Batman cinematic journey. Although, I guess technically there's one in the 1960s with Adam West. But in terms of modern superhero films and the darker aesthetic, I think we have all of the darkness in the DCEU, for better or worse, in part to blame on Batman and Michael Keaton's movie from 1989. One of my favorite superhero movies from growing up. Yeah, this is an odd one. This is a film, The Flash, that was announced the same month or the month before that the Flash TV show hit the air. And the Flash TV show is ending this month after 9 full seasons, including through the pandemic. So the fact that it is taking this long to get the Flash movie, which was announced with Ezra Miller, they didn't do any recasting, they didn't do any of that. The fact that it's taken 9 years to get a Flash movie in theaters, I think just says how much trouble that this production has had from the beginning. Zack Snyder out at the DCEU, James Gunn in, Peter Safran in. They're using the Flashpoint storyline to reboot, which is an interesting choice. For anyone who watched the Flash TV show, this is what they did in season 2 of the Flash TV show, sort of at the very beginning, in a limited 2 or 3 episode format. I think it works better as a storytelling device for a feature film, and this is the setup for what we're getting in the Flash film. That's not a spoiler. It's in trailers, it's in the commercials, and the commercials for the Flash are everywhere right now. The cast in this, Kiersey Clemons is Iris West. This looks like a lot of fun. This is also on my list. I have The Flash as my number 2 movie for the month of June. That is a little bit of a cheat because they did a screening of The Flash at CinemaCon. So I've already seen the vast majority of the film. It cut off right before the credits, so I've heard that there are some mid-credits, end-credits scenes, but it is a lot of fun. And that's it. This is a fun movie. They got the fun part of Barry Allen in this film, so I'm really excited to see what the finished theatrical product is. They said it wasn't 100% finished effects, but it sure looked finished to me. But it seems like they got the character of Barry Allen right in the DCEU, just at the point where they're going to reboot, and I would assume also recast, because given everything that's happened with Ezra Miller, I can't picture him coming back to this role in a rebooted universe, but you never know. If this movie makes a ton of money, we could very well see Ezra Miller and everything that goes along with Ezra Miller in future films as well. But this is one that I'm really looking forward to seeing hit theaters June 16th. A film with John Hamm of Mad Men fame. This is Maggie Moore's Moores. Moores as in plural, with an S at the end, in brackets. Maggie Moores. Tell me about Maggie Moores.
Yeah, I also hadn't heard about this until I started coming up with my list here. And as soon as I found it, I was like, wow, this is like a me movie. This is exactly what I go to the movies for. So yeah, first of all, stars John Hamm, directed by John Slattery, also of Mad Men. This is his second feature, and also has Tina Fey in a supporting role. And it's one of these like weird small town dark comedy mystery crime movies about a small town where two women with the same name are murdered, and the detective trying to figure it out and whether or not it's a coincidence and how they how that could possibly have happened, this big weird strange coincidence of murder. And in a lot of ways it reminded me a little bit of last year's Confess Fletch, in which John Hamm portrayed the new version of the Fletch character. And yeah, this trailer just looks fantastic. I love these kinds of like Coen Brothers inspired, like, small town, a bunch of weird characters. There's a murder at the center of it all. And, balancing that tone of comedy and mystery. And yeah, I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, John Slattery, he played Roger on Mad Men. He's the thin, silvery-haired, bit of a man-child. From that movie. And for anyone who's watched the MCU, he was the guy who played the adult version of Tony Stark's dad in Iron Man 2 and also some of the subsequent films, including Avengers Endgame. He was the one who Tony Stark goes back to see his dad in 1970, and they have that little moment. But John Slattery has such a great comedic sense to him. And after watching the trailer, after I saw your list, it doesn't surprise me that he would have, as a feature film goes, with him as director, somehow it doesn't surprise me that he has a Coen Brothers influence.
Sure.
I don't know whether they're friends in real life. That is a great reference, because the Coen Brothers' sense of comedy, just the oddball comedy, sort of that burn after reading. Some of those period piece, small town, Coen Brothers comedies, there's just that oddball aesthetic to it, sort of that Raising Arizona feel that pops up in the trailer for this film. And then you throw a murder mystery thing on top of that. John Hamm as the alpha male, private eye, police detective investigating things. And Tina Fey, the first female head writer in SNL history, one of my favorite all-time writer, directors, Mean Girls, all of that. Tina Fey, you throw that in on top of that, of John Slattery and John Hamm. This is a movie, Maggie Moores, didn't even pop up on the Wikipedia page for movies coming out in June, or on the backup movieinsider.com. The fact that it didn't pop up on either one of those, I just had to do an IMDb search for this film. I was like, oh, this looks great. I can't believe that I haven't heard of this, especially when you have this many big names attached to this film. Looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully it'll come out in theaters here in Vegas. We have a couple, 2, 3, 4 art house theaters, so hopefully we'll be getting Maggie Moores in theaters here.
Yeah.
This is Indiana Jones 5. This is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, with Harrison Ford returning as Indiana Jones. Tell me about the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, the 5th in the series, and hopefully the final in the series. Hopefully, Disney doesn't just stretch this out as long as they can. Poor Harrison Ford. But yeah, we get old man Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. We get digitally de-aged, which looks like they did a really good job this time around. Harrison Ford as earlier, scenes of Indiana Jones. And we have James Mangold stepping in to direct this time around, who, what has James Mangold done that's not good, so it's a great choice as far as somebody other than Spielberg to direct this thing. And I know we're recording this right after it just had its premiere at Cannes, and the reactions have been mixed at best, I guess. But I don't really think that was the right setting to premiere a movie like this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the trailers are great, and it's Indiana Jones. Even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, like, for all of its, people saying that it was terrible, I think it's just I think it was goofy. I don't think it was. I never thought it was terrible. I thought it was just very goofy. I think Temple of Doom is goofy. I think it's like right on that same level. I hope this is more Raiders or more
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. Yeah, I hope it's more in line with those. But even if it's another goofy one to go out on, it's still Indiana Jones.
You're right. This is James Mangold. So this is the same guy that brought us Logan. I don't think it was nominated for an Oscar, but it was in the Oscar conversation. So it was Logan and the Wolverine, which were two great, darker but still emotionally satisfying Wolverine films. This is also, it's written by David Koepp, who works with Spielberg a ton. This is Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's done a ton of stuff. She was in the Star Wars movies. She's also in her own series, Fleabag. This is a return of John Rhys Davies as Sala. This is Antonio Banderas. This is going down the list. This is Toby Jones, and this is also Mads Mikkelsen. Ooh. So the guy,
love Mads.
Yeah, this is a guy who's played Hannibal Lecter. This is a guy who's played every villain known to mankind. He was the villain in Doctor Strange 1. Mads Mikkelsen. How does anyone not love Mads Mikkelsen in a villain role as Jürgen Voller? I am also a little bit torn on this film because Crystal Skull came around, 10, 12 years ago, or a little bit longer than that now, 2006 or 7. The original Indiana Jones trilogy from the 80s, 81, 84, and 89. That was my childhood, from the time I was about 6, 7 years old through the time to when I was 14, 15. So I love the original trilogy. Temple of Doom not as much, but still, that's part of that era of Indiana Jones and adventure. Yeah. That in adventure serials that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas wrote together, just because they were at the height of their games and loved those 30s, 40s serials from when they were kids. When I heard that he was coming back, when Harrison Ford was coming back at 80-something years old, at the same time that he was doing a Yellowstone prequel TV show and then doing another TV show, I was a little bit worried because Harrison Ford has been a guy for the last 20 years that has done, say, 3 movies every 2 years.
Yeah.
Roughly. And Harrison Ford is a guy who is a bit surly in his years. He's been the biggest movie star in Hollywood for 4 decades now. And other than doing PSAs for giraffes in Africa and wildlife, which is a great thing to put your name towards, who hasn't really liked going on the Tonight Show to promote things anymore. And because he was so excited when they killed off Han Solo, because they finally killed off Han Solo, which is something that he's been emoting in interviews for 3 decades, I was a little bit reticent when I heard the announcement that Harrison Ford at 80 plus would be coming back as Indiana Jones again. Don't get me wrong, I love Indiana Jones. It is one of my favorite characters. It is one of my favorite Harrison Ford movie series. But this is one that comes in at number 6 on my list.
Hey, if nothing else, we get John Williams back to score it. So
yes,
get to hear that in IMAX. So
I love Harrison Ford. I love this character. Never say never, but this is probably the final time we'll see Harrison Ford in flesh and blood as Harrison Ford as Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Hopefully not Harrison Ford as Harrison Ford, but Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. I love so much about this. I love the idea of Indiana Jones in the 60s space race. I'm a little torn on the CGI de-aging. Technology is getting better, but it is still a little on the far side of the uncanny valley as far as my opinion goes. But still, the best of modern technology, a phenomenal director, a motivated Harrison Ford, not just for a paycheck, but to actually do some work and return to a character that was one of his biggest sources of success and fame. Get the fedora out, get the whip out. Harrison Ford, as Indiana Jones. Phenomenal. I love it. We did miss one that on my list. Asteroid City is from Wes Anderson. This is an all-star cast. I am really looking forward forward to. This is such a bizarre looking flick. Comes out June 16th. A lot of the usual Wes Anderson acting troupe at this point. We're getting Edward Norton, Jonathan Schwartzman, Jeffrey Wright. But this one is more of a comedy. That old 1950s, 1960s road trip going through Arizona, and the wackiness that we only see in Wes Anderson movies comes to the fore pretty quickly, but it's a comedy. So, and we're also getting Tom Hanks, everybody and their brother in this film, but it's also on your list. I'm stealing the thunder a little bit. I missed it on the countdown, so I apologize, but this is one that comes in at number 1 on your list. It was all carefully planned out, but tell me about your number 1 movie, Asteroid City.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, Asteroid City, I'm so excited for. I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, and yeah, this cast is just absolutely stacked with Anderson regulars as well as a bunch of newcomers. Tom Hanks, I'm very excited about joining the roster, and yeah, it's a weird looking one. Like, you know, I would consider all of his movies comedies to some particular degree, but this one I felt like it's set in a 50s like Midwest town, but that at the same time it feels like it's the future based on what's happening in the trailer. And so it's like the tone of it just seems to be like all over the place, but in a good Wes Anderson way. And it seems like something a little different from anything. Like, I know a lot of people like to complain that he does his thing, his Wes Anderson thing all the time, but this definitely feels like he's using his same stylization, but in a kind of different way. So I'm excited to see that. Also, it seems like Jason Schwartzman is the lead character here. I'm not entirely sure about that. I mean, with a big ensemble like this, but with Schwartzman, if he is the lead character, you know, taking you back to Rushmore, and like, you know, I love Jason Schwartzman. So that would be awesome if that is the case. It just looks super goofy. It looks like it's playing with tropes of like classic sci-fi movies, but set in a weird little middle of nowhere Midwest town, and us being here in Nevada, like it kind of feels like home a little bit, like when we're driving up the 93 or something like that. So it definitely fits for people who live here in Las Vegas.
I can't remember the name of it, but there is a giant impact site in Arizona. So that would be my guess as to where the real life version is getting referred to in this film. This is crazy. This is Tom Hanks, Adrian Brody, Liev Schreiber, Scarlett Johansson, Bryan Cranston, Steve Carell, Oscar nominee Hong Chow, Matt Dillon, Willem Dafoe, Margot Robbie, Maya Hawke. If Kevin Bacon's not in this film somewhere, this is one of the missing pieces in the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, because everybody is in this film. And the fact that we're getting Tom Hanks and Bryan Cranston in a feature film together is crazy for me. And you're right, Jason Schwartzman is first billed, at least in terms of IMDb. I love him as a character actor. I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a trailer of a film where he was playing an oddball character, and he was serenading, I think it was Amanda Seyfried, and he was singing, "Oh, Angela," in the trailer itself. And I can't remember if that was even the final take that was in the final film, but just, I always associate weird oddball characters with Jason Schwartzman, and that's what he looks like he's playing in this film. I love Wes Anderson, and I love The French Dispatch, but if I'm being honest, The French Dispatch, while it was great Wes Anderson, it was Wes Anderson going full Wes Anderson. In much the same way that when Jason Bateman goes full Jason Bateman, I'm not as big a fan. Like, I love Jason Bateman in Hancock, and when he's restrained a little bit, more of, you know, Horrible Bosses. Jason Bateman in the one with
Development.
Yeah, Arrested Development. I couldn't stand Arrested Development. Love the cast. There's something about Jason Bateman going full Jason Bateman. When he's dialed back a little bit, I prefer that so much more. Wes Anderson in The French Dispatch went full Wes Anderson, and while I love that film, it was a little artsy-fartsy, even by my standards, and I love that style of film. So the fact that we're returning to more of a Royal Tenenbaums style of Wes Anderson comedy, and this is definitely what this is. This is not moody lighting. This is not moody cinematography. This is fully exposed frames, and Tom Hanks with a weird mustache and gray hair, and getting Bryan Cranston in here too. I don't remember seeing him in the trailer. The fact that we're getting all of these people, not just the Wes Anderson regular acting troupe, calling in favors of saying, hey, I really want you to be in this film. I am, fingers crossed, really excited for Asteroid City as well. What is your favorite Wes Anderson movie of all time?
Oh, that's a good one. It's really difficult to choose, but I mean, I'd probably have to go with Royal Tenenbaum, but like, it changes all the time. I love so many of his movies. Even Isle of Dogs, which isn't as popular, was like my favorite movie of 2019 when it came out. Like, I love that movie.
And I haven't even seen that one. That one's on my list, but Grand Budapest Hotel is one of my favorites. So many great quirky films over the years. I still have not seen Bottle Rocket, by the way. That is one that keeps popping up. It's where his association with the Wilson brothers kind of first starts, at least on film. Have you seen Bottle Rocket, by the way? I've not seen it.
I haven't seen it in like over 20 years, but like I would have it towards the bottom of my list. But I don't know, maybe if I finally got around to a rewatch, it might raise up in my ranking.
It's the Wilson brothers pre-Armageddon. Armageddon was the first time I saw Owen Wilson in a film, so this is even before that. Asteroid City, number 6 on my list, number 1 on your list. I was not a huge fan of the style of animation when I saw the trailers when it first hit theaters. I wasn't even going to see it in theaters just because the animation style that didn't speak to me when I saw the first trailers. But upon suggestions from friends whose taste I trust, went to go see it, and I was blown away. The animation style is not one that normally speaks to me, but of that style of animation, it is perfectly done, and it's the best version, the high watermark version of the style of animation. It is very kinetic, it is very emotive, and yet somehow still kind of comic bookish in an odd sort of way. The key, though, is the acting. The writing in this film, the voice acting, the character work. I don't know the character of Miles Morales all that well, but after watching the first film, they showed a CinemaCon 2022. Sony presented the first 15 minutes of the film. I did not see that, but I did see at CinemaCon 2023. They showed a different section, 14 minutes long, this time more of an emotional scene that they were still working on, so it was temporary effects. They were working on the emotional side of the story, and it looked very heartfelt, very true to the character that we saw in the first film. Still coming of age, but into a larger multiverse of Spider-Verse of characters. Phenomenal. It is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is my number 1 movie for the month of June.
I just noticed Jason Schwartzman's one of the voices, so
there
you go.
Nice.
Tie our number 1s together.
Love it. Reflect a little bit on your June list, starting with The Blackening, Past Lives, all the way on up. What are your thoughts on your June list for movies coming out?
Well, I think it's a very well-rounded month. As much as it's a stacked month, it's also well-rounded with, like, you know, obviously we've got the superhero stuff, blockbuster stuff. We've got comedies like we talked about with The Blackening and No Hard Feelings, and the Wes Anderson movie, Asteroid City. We also have, you know, more art type films, Past Lives, and you know, I guess Asteroid City could fit in there as well a little bit. And then I was just so excited to find out about Maggie Moore's, like I said, a movie that just didn't even exist to me until I was making my list and then found out about. So yeah, I mean, that just bounced right to the top of what I'm excited about this summer. Wide range of movies, and very excited for The Blackening. I got to say that.
Me as well. It's funny that we have 9 of the same movies of these 11. Interesting, too, because I've been doing this as a podcast format for now. This is the 4th month. And this is the most same movies crossing over with my guest list in those 4 months. And it is interesting because we have so many huge hits coming out in June, or what are expected to be huge hits. There's not as many smaller films coming to streaming as that were in April, May, and March.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to have Extraction 2 on your list, but
yeah, yeah, I thought about it and I watched the trailer for a second time, and I was like, yeah, no. There's a reason why it's streaming on Netflix. Everything on my list is true to what I'm excited for, which was sort of the intention of this video in the first place in terms of this podcast. Daliland and Transformers and all of these films, definitely I am I am excited for more than Extraction 2.
Yes.
I do have a couple of comedies there. I have No Hard Feelings, The Blackening. Thank you for coming on. Piecing It Together is the podcast. What other podcasts do you have lined up, coming up?
I have this coming week that we're recording this. I actually have 2 episodes going up. One on Sisu, the Nazi hunting movie, which was a lot of fun, and then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which needs no introduction. I also have an episode on a movie that nobody liked except for me and my guest. So I'm excited about that. It's a movie called Fool's Paradise from Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Not doing well at the box office, not doing well with critics, but I thought was hilarious. So we've got a really fun episode on that coming up in a couple weeks too. That
Fool's Paradise was one that my guest brought up last month as one he was looking forward to, and I've been meaning to go see it in theaters. It looks like a ton of fun. Charlie Day's directorial debut, him sort of in a film that kind of evokes Dave a little bit, Kevin Kline's old movie, him playing 2 roles and sort of deconstructing Hollywood to a certain extent. So Fool's Paradise I have not seen yet, but it looks like a great example of independent filmmaking and a big Hollywood celebrity calling up all their friends and saying, would you like to play a really quirky character and you can help shape the character? That's what Fool's Paradise looks like. You liked Fool's Paradise?
I loved it. I was laughing so hard through the whole movie. It's so ridiculous. But I'm curious to hear what you think of it.
Yeah, I've not seen it as of yet. I'm with all of this getting the podcast up and running and stuff. I haven't been watching. The irony of starting a podcast about movies is that I haven't had as much time to go watch movies as I traditionally do. So this is one of those Fool's Paradise that I love watching in the theater. So I definitely need to get out to the theater, and your podcast on Fool's Paradise and Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and what was the other one? Sisu?
Sisu, yeah.
Sisu? Yeah, I have not seen that one either, but I also need to... Sisu is also one of the ones that I need to watch. David Rosen, Piecing It Together. Thank you for coming on the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. I would love to have you back anytime that you want to come on. Piecing It Together is the podcast, piecingpod.com. All of the streaming platforms, all the major ones at least, links in the description section below this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next time. Also, everybody that was in the live stream, I didn't see any comments, so anyone who would like to comment about any of the movies you saw us talking about for the month of June, or just whatever movies you're looking forward to come out in the month of June, let me know in the comments section below the video. So thank you for coming on, and I will see you guys next time.